Good news, everybody. The first ever clinical trial of laboratory-grown red blood cells is being transfused into another person is taking place. It has been launched. This is NHS Blood and Transplant, and they're saying that red blood cells that have been grown in a laboratory have now been transfused into another person in a world-first clinical trial. The manufactured blood cells were grown from stem cells from donors. Now we have a little bit of video on this, so let's just have a look at how they're promoting it.
So RESTORE is a clinical trial that's set up to assess whether lab-grown red blood cells, so red cells grown from stem cells in the lab, are similar or better than a donor's own blood cells that they produce inside their body. What we're hoping is because they're so freshly made and ready to go, they'll be better. And if that's true, then this will be a world first, because effectively we've taken a cell producing a donor and we've put them into a volunteer who's not related to the donor, and they've been matched. But the only other time this has been done in the past is where it's been taken from a person and then gone back into that person. So now we've taken it a step further. We've taken it from a donor that's not related. That donor's produced blood, and then it's gone into somebody unrelated, and effectively that's the world first. That's called allogeneic. It's effectively an allogeneic transfusion.
So there we go. But now what could the possible implications of this be? Well, let's just come back to March this year and Science Daily. And the headline in their report here is "Researchers re-engineer red blood cells to trigger immune system against COVID-19. And this says that physicists, chemists and immunologists at McMaster University have teamed up to modify red blood cells to transport viral agents which can safely trigger the immune system, protect the body against SARS-CoV-2. And how are they doing this? Well, because they're embedding the spike protein in the cell wall of the red blood cells, and wanting to see the spike protein distributed around the body that way. Now, I'm not suggesting that there's any connection between that piece of research and the clinical trial which NHS Blood and Transfusion are doing. I'm suggesting that, again, there are questions that need to be asked and answered there. Debbie, very briefly, what are your thoughts on this?
Absolutely horrified. This is not a good idea. I mean, basically, this is genetically modified blood grown in a laboratory. And interestingly, when I've spoken to Dr. Anne-Marie Yim in Luxembourg, she had got evidence of, after the COVID vaccine, we were seeing sickle cells appearing. So they were becoming shaped like a sickle. And this lab-grown blood, I believe, is what's going forward for people with sickle cell anemia, for example. So extremely worrying. We know all about spike proteins, blood transfusion, Cambridge, tons I could say, Mike, but I'll save it for another day.
Okay, thank you. And Alex?
Yes, just say in passing that donated blood is very dear to my heart, because my wife needed hundreds of donations of blood through periods of illness, and I think she will be even more horrified when I tell her about this. But yes, just scooting through this section, because the real health expert is Debbie, and I don't want to shorten her segments later, but this is really acknowledgements to viewers on some health issues that have been flagged up to us. Bill Fring has been very persistent in asking the Dorset University Hospitals NHS Trust, a trust is a local NHS body that governs itself, about their statistics. So we see that they finally coughed up. They were created in October 2020, so during the COVID hullabaloo already. The next slide shows what they were asked, which was the number of patients who have been referred to the heart failure diagnostic clinic within their trust. And of course, for that part of Southwest England, they, being the teaching hospitals, are the ones who are going to get the difficult heart cases. And it's the Royal Bournemouth and the Poole are the hospitals. And you see the almost doubling from 2020 to 21 at the Royal Bournemouth, from 293 to 508. And at Poole, half as many again in 2021, 200 go up to 288. Bill Fring has really persisted there, and I think that people should do likewise. From down under, a Scotsman who's now gone to the Northern Territory as an emigre for most of his life, writes this: that the New Testament, what a telling era, the Northern Territory Government Gazette is covering this. It's authorising clinics across the top end, which is Northern Australia, to administer smallpox/monkeypox vaccine. And we know in the Northern Territory they claim, oh, well, we're remote and we have a lot of Aborigines and we have to have special measures. Well, the viewer who writes points that out to him for himself. The clinics are in Darwin, the state capital, and in Catherine, largely attended by Indigenous or Aboriginal people. The viewer just looked up a bit about this particular vaccine. It's not an mRNA technology, and it's been tested for efficacy in animals, monkeys and prairie dogs, and gave about 80% satisfactory results. It's been tested on humans for safety and also considered safe, but never tested for efficacy in humans. And there's a phase 3 trial going on in the Congo. So shades of experimenting on black people, I'm sorry to say. I have to put it as bluntly as that. The same viewer says on another issue that their last state premier, the bug-eyed Michael Gunner of the famous clip, saying, you're not on my side anymore unless you advocate for jabbing. Gunner's got a new job. He's been appointed by Dr. Twiggy Forrest, as he's known out there, to lead a private foundation that's pushing the green agenda on Northern Australia. Look at the Orwellian language used in the NT News, the Northern Territory News. Here it is from a photograph from Sholto, who sent this in. Gunner goes green. He's attempting there to pose like a smiling ordinary man with his children. And here's the detail from the article. Mr. Gunner will head a new Northern Australian team for Fortescue Future Industries. Who they're the people who founded? They're the people founded by Andrew Twiggy Forrest, who's got Gunner this new job. And here's the underlining, which Sholto gave me when he sent it in. Gunner says, we must bring the same urgency to the climate change race to real zero. What's real zero, I wonder? That we did with the global COVID pandemic. Well, you know how Gunner went around the COVID pandemic with his zero zeal, so watch out. A blog on Substack, which is very popular, is the Metatron, also known as Dead Man Talking. And here we have something which is only 2 years late, but all general practitioners, that's family doctors, in England, not in the whole of the UK, have just received this Dear Clinicians note, reports Joel Smalley, who runs that Substack blog. And you can see that it's saying, did you know that there's a yellow card scheme? And if you suspect there's what they call side effects to COVID jabs, you can report it. So better late than never. Something's happening there. With regard to masks, the Critic, a serious journal in Britain, reports there's no case for mask mandates. Subtitle, we cannot trust models based on bogus assumptions. Why is this? Well, if you'll bring on that on screen, it's that just a month and a bit ago, Dame Ruth May, the Chief Nursing Officer, responded on behalf of the CEO of NHS England, Amanda Pritchard, and said, we have strong evidence that widespread masking had a significant impact on preventing COVID transmission. It now turns out that this was a preprint. It's not even been peer reviewed, and there's problems enough with peer reviewing in medical journals, as people are increasingly aware. This is just a preprint, so someone's own findings not reviewed by anyone, saying it's basically a hypothetical computer model. So the Critic has more details on the next slide. We won't read it all out, you can freeze the screen, but it's not been peer reviewed. It has a cautionary note explicitly that it shouldn't be treated as gospel. And then the final paragraph is comment, cultural descent into ubiquitous masks in hospitals and health centres, which has got really no justification and is inhumane. It's faceless professionals hidden behind veneers of sterility. I thought that's strong language. Another write-up of the same is in the Daily Sceptic, who, having cited the Critic in what I've just shown people, write in their own regard, the modelling preprint itself, so that the one paper used by NHS England to say why they have masks as a policy, that preprint itself acknowledges that there are, quote, important gaps in the evidence base, and that, quote, evidence around the efficacy, remember that with the jab a moment ago from Northern Territory, efficacy of interventions such as wearing masks is severely lacking, yet by assuming mask efficacy in its model, the paper used finds that face coverings will prevent 46,000 infections of healthcare staff. From the Daily Mail, we've got SAGE. Most of our viewers know who they are. The bane of many people's existence during COVID, the scientific advisory group to the British government that told them to lock people down hard and do things harshly to them, and to inculcate in them a sense that we're all in it together. SAGE is now being quoted as saying this, according to one of its members, Professor Catherine Noakes, a mechanical engineer at the University of Leeds, that the people are trying to save money by not heating their homes and closing their windows, but this causes a lack of ventilation, and they could get ill and have heightened levels of damp and mold in their houses. Well, I don't know about you, but we're saving money as well by keeping the heating off. But we managed to ventilate rooms while we're not using them. With this study at the moment, it's got the windows closed, and when I leave it and go to the living room, I'll open the window here. You'd have thought that wasn't beyond people, but no. Sage has got an advice on that. Something we have to say, since Debi's clip went viral, we'll be talking about that in her own segment later, is that this, largely through the sloppy headline orthography in the source she used, Endpoint News, it's not all her fault, she read this out on air as not as an abbreviation for phase 3, PHIII, but as PH111, as if it was a vaccine code. And that has, well, it's a good thing in a way that it's gone viral. You'll hear more about that from Debi herself. Just to point out to people that there is no Pfizer vaccine coded PH111. This was an abbreviation for phase 3. We reported that in the show notes. And this has gone on to a Belgian blogger who's picked up on this as well, Olivier de Molenaar, who says in his headline, they want to inject children from their mother's belly onwards, which is accurate. Debi was accurate about this. And they want to inject humanity by all means possible. And you can see there that PH111 has been caught out or has been picked up from this mishearing or misreading. But just to show that this isn't UK Column only saying this, News Medical Life Sciences has a piece up from the 1st of November separately reporting this. And if you tap that again, we'll find what the actual vaccination code number is. It is a vaccine candidate with the code PF-06928316. So lest anyone say that there's any fake news involved here, we've tracked it